Thanks everyone for joining us today. We are excited to be continuing this series of our horticulture webinars on Thursdays. And we're really excited to have Doug McLaren here today. And I want to thank him so much for taking the time out. He did a class for us on winter tree ID. If some of you joined us for that, we really enjoyed it, and enjoyed it so much that we asked him to come back and do a summer tree ID for us. Doug McLaren is now retired, but formerly was the forester in the forestry department at the University of Kentucky. And I know he's still, even in his retirement, is helping a lot there and doing talks like these. So we really appreciate you, Doug, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's great to be back with you all again. Several things I'll mention before we get started, and that is there's going to be two handouts that are going to be sent to you later today at some time. We're going to be looking at those handouts as we go through here. It's nothing more than just a summary of all the things that we're talking about. And also, if you were with me back in January, the first few slides are going to be repetition, which is fine because repetition kind of gets you up to the new starting point. So the first half dozen slides or so are going to be ones that you saw before, but it sets the stage for where we're going. And also, whenever I move my screen over that we're all looking at it, I cannot see any of the chat box. So we'll hold those questions till the end, but I can't see that while I have the PowerPoint up. So I think what we'll do is, can I just go ahead and share my screen with the PowerPoint? Is that okay at this point?
Yep, go right ahead. And then if people want to type questions into the chat, as Doug said, we'll ask those at the end of the presentation.
Let's see if we can, there we go. It looks like we're up and running here. This first slide here, it kind of makes you think about what you're doing today, and that is you're trying to identify trees, and you're standing on your head to read some of these words, and you're looking sideways, and some of them are very available to you as far as, you know, that great big word tree there. Yeah, you got a tree in front of you, but what kind of a tree is it? And that's what today is all about. As I started off the winter ID, it's simply kick back, and you don't have to take any notes. There's very few things that you have to take notes about. We're not going to be talking about specific trees. We're going to be talking about the concept of how you identify trees. And it's going to be a flow chart for you. You'll see that at the very end. So if you'd like to, just kick back like this individual did, and absorb everything that you can, and we'll start identifying trees eventually. I did want to talk to you a little bit about forestry resources here in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky is 50% forested, so it's very important for us to recognize the trees that we're dealing with, but the majority of it is in the eastern part of the state, as you can fathom, because of the mountain area. There's over 100 different species that foresters think about when they walk into the field. They may not be a commercial tree, but they do tell us something about where the trees are growing. There are 50 commercially important trees to the industry here in the state of Kentucky. You know, your oaks, the hickories, yellow poplars, all those. But there is accountable for 50 different species of trees. And I circled the B in the industry value, and it is a $13 billion industry per year. We're talking about the resource itself and all of those that are attached. So it is a very valuable resource here in the state of Kentucky, but it's one that a few people think about. So again, we're going to be talking about summer tree identification. Again, my name is Doug McLaren. I retired from the university about 5 years ago, but I still enjoy doing a lot of programming. So it's great to be here with you. And I do believe that we have people from 4 different counties. So it's nice to be able to talk to everyone out. What are we going to do for the day, for the rest of the day, which is going to be 50 minutes or less? First of all, we're going to learn how to identify trees in their summer foliage. When I was here in January, we talked about identifying trees in the winter plumage, I guess you might say. Secondly, there's probably a lot of people that can identify a lot of trees, but what I want to do is subconsciously, how is it that you're identifying those trees? Thirdly, I want to send you out of here today with the basic fundamentals as to being able to identify any tree or plant in the world. Now, 50 minutes or less, and I'm expecting you to be able to identify any tree or plant in the world. To make this even more exciting is by learning the fundamentals of identification, you should be able to identify all the animals in the world. And I'll explain that to you at the very end here. Finally, a test or two. I don't know if people knew that they were going to have a test, but you're going to have a test or two here momentarily. And since we have 50 minutes, why not learn a little bit about Greek and Latin too? So with all of those things that we have to do, I guess we need to press forward. With so many different species of trees that abound here in the state of Kentucky, we have to learn how to identify each of them for our needs. And like I said, there's 50 commercially important trees that we need to know, plus 100 trees that are out there that we need to identify also. What I'd like to do to talk about how do you identify trees, I think we'll start with something that we're familiar with, and that is people. I think we know how to identify people. When I look at this picture in front of us, I see people on the right-hand side and a picture of a large canopy of trees on the left. I equate both of those pictures as being the same. There's people in the right-hand side standing close shoulder to shoulder, and on the left-hand side, the same thing. What I'd like to do is point out these three, or well, this smaller group of people right here. And the word that we're looking for, something that distinguishes or identifies an individual, is a characteristic. And the way you identify people, your family members, your friends, whoever it might be, you identify them by characteristics. How tall are they? And you can see the three people in front of this group. You'll notice that the one lady is standing up on a step. So she is relatively shorter than the two gentlemen that are on either side of her. Let's talk about hair color. Let's talk about hair length. Let's talk about beards. Let's talk about weight. Let's talk about gender. All of those are characteristics that you absorb when you see someone. And even when you meet somebody new, you take in their characteristics. Well, we're going to take the same concept and move from people to identifying trees. And we're going to take it one step at a time. This is just a collage of trees. I showed this in the winter ID, and I'm showing it here. It just simply shows you the different characteristics of trees. The one in the top left-hand corner, the limbs, and the bottom one is a wide canopy. I think there was a question asked last time, what is that picture in the middle? And what that is a conifer. This is the seed capsule right here of the conifer. The conifer's roots, of course, are at the bottom, and these are the needles, and the needles are getting ready to push that seed coating off. But that's simply a newly germinated conifer. But this is just a collage of talking about characteristics of trees. I did mention to you that it is a lot more difficult. And if any of you took me up on that suggestion of after you learned how to do winter ID, when I did any, I hope some of you did. It's a lot harder to do it in the wintertime than what it is during the summertime, for the obvious reason of these two pictures that I've just entered here. And one of them is the leaves that we have on trees. They really add a lot of dimension to identifying. And then also later on, just in a short period of months, we're going to have fruit. So we're going to talk about the leaf-on method here first. And the very first thing we're going to do is the two broad categories. And the one on the right is the conifers that we have here in the state of Kentucky. There's not very many of them in relationship to the broadleaves, which are on the left. The broadleaves are those trees that normally lose their needles in the winter. Again, we're not going to talk about specific trees, but people are very curious about these two particular ones. The one on the left is the sassafras, and we identify it by 3 different shapes of leaves on any one tree. And then the one on the right is the hemlock. And the hemlock is a tree that you'll find in eastern Kentucky that is found normally in the eastern part of the state in these deep hollers that we have. So, but when we're talking about leaves on, here are the 2 broad categories that we're going to be talking about. The very first one that I want to bring to your attention as far as a conifer, and that is the flat needled one. The leaves are actually very, very small. There where my cursor is, there's several different leaves there, meaning they're very small and they're scale-like. And if any of you have ever dealt with a cedar, you'll recognize the fact that they are very jaggy. When you put your hand into a cedar, you come back out with a lot of red spots on your arm due to the spotting. Next, we're going to talk about conifers that have needles, either one needle, which is borne singly, or groups of 2, 3s, and 5s. So we'll talk about those next. So we have the one conifer, the cedar, which is made up of flat, jagging leaves. And now we're talking about those that have needles. And these 2 particular ones, the hemlock is on your left. It is a flat leaved tree and is also singly borne. And that is, there's only 1 leaf, 1 needle. And over here on the right-hand side, we have bald cypress. Same thing. It looks almost exactly like a hemlock in that it's a flat needle. Now, these trees grow in the opposite ends of the state. Hemlock is in the eastern, and the bald cypress is found in the extreme western part of the state where we have wet feet, I guess you might say. Now, the next one we're going to talk about, which is also a singly borne needle. And you can see the singly borne. Again, I want to caution everybody, you don't have to be taking notes on all this. This is all going to come to you in a key that is going to spell all of this out for you. So don't try to keep up with me writing all these characteristics down. Just recognize the fact that these 3 trees that we have right here are singly borne needles. One thing that I will let you write down, and that is with the spruce. Now, native spruce is only found on Pine and Black Mountain in the extreme eastern part of the state. The ones that are out in your front yard are not native spruce. They are grown for purposes to be put in landscaping. But the thing that I can say about this one is it's a single needle. If you go out there and you pull off a needle off of any spruce, you can literally roll it between your fingertips and you will feel the 4 sides of it. Hemlock, bald cypress are flat. You can't roll them, but a spruce you can roll. Now, what we're getting into now are the 2 needles in a bundle. And you can see right here, this is the Virginia pine, and you can see where these 2 needles are growing out of the same bundle. And this bundle has a scientific name, which I want to introduce you to, and that is called fascicle. So whenever you have a fascicle, that means that you're on a conifer tree and there's more than 1 needle. So when you have a bundle of needles on a conifer, it is called a fascicle. Hemlock, bald cypress, spruce do not have fascicles. They are singly borne. All right, let's move on down through here. Pitch pine, you can see right here where the 3 needles originate from the fascicle, from this fascicle, and growing. Now, we don't see pitch pine very often for the simple reason it grows along our ridge lines in usually the eastern part of the state. And usually it's on the very top of those ridges. And normally most of us don't spend too much time climbing those hills to find a pitch pine. But it has 3 needles. Next comes shortleaf. I do not have a picture of shortleaf, but you could get it confused with pitch pine or the short. Get it confused with the pitch pine or the Virginia pine. But on any single stem, you will find groups or fascicles that either have 2 needles in the bundle or 3 needles in the bundle. This is a very good test question for professors at the university level when they're identifying trees. What will happen is most students will go up to a tree and they will look at one characteristic, one location on that limb, and they will put all of their scientific knowledge into that. But on the shortleaf, if you look up and down the limb, you will find out that there's some fascicles with 2, some fascicles with 3. But it looks very similar between a Virginia and a pitch pine. Now the next one I do not have a picture of either. It is 3. It looks a lot like the pitch pine, except, well, first of all, loblolly is not even a native tree. It was brought into the western part of the state for the paper industry out there, but there's a lot of loblollies in western Kentucky. But the difference between the loblolly and the pitch is very coarse. The needles are extremely tough and they're rigid. Where on the loblolly pine, they're very soft and delicate. Even though they're very long, they can be up to 1 foot in length. The needles themselves, it's a much more flowing tree than what the pitch pine is. And we have one more tree to look at, and that is the white pine. And the white pine is a tree that has 5 needles in the bundle, and the bundle scientific name is called a fascicle. All right. So these are all of the native conifers that we're going to look at for the state of Kentucky. That is probably the majority of them that we have that we contend with. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and push all the conifers to the side, and we're going to start looking at the broadleaf trees. And what we need to do is to look at the arrangement of the leaves and buds on these deciduous trees, the broadleaves. And we want to talk about the arrangement of leaves and buds. And this is probably the most important part of this whole discussion, and that is how to identify. You need to look at leaves and buds. And I'm going to take us back and look at this bud. This is actually a walnut, the limb of a walnut. And I noticed that walnut just started greening out their leaves, just started, oh, I would say maybe 3-4 days ago. But this is a walnut twig, and I wanted to show you that we need to think and look at the buds. This is the terminal bud. Remember back in the winter ID, we talked about the terminal bud, and these are lateral buds. But the thing is you need to find those buds to be able to help in the identification of a deciduous tree. Also, these buds, this is where the new leaves are coming from. If you go out and look at any tree that is sprouting right now, you'll find that those leaves are starting to push out of those buds. Also, the fruits that are going to be created are going to be created as a result of the bud opening up, and also the new buds. Here's a bud, but in about a week's time after this sprouts out, you're going to have a new bud created. And the bud is this undeveloped shoot. We're talking about these 2 things right here, and they normally occur between the stem and where the leaf goes out. So this is the bud, this is the stem, and this is the petiole on the leaf. And this is probably, understanding this part of it, you're understanding a good percentage of how to identify a deciduous tree. So we're going to move from the bud and go back to the arrangement. Oh, I have another collage of trees here, and I wanted to show you buds. Top left-hand corner, this is a pawpaw tree. Notice this bud is a magnolia. Notice how large that bud is compared to these two small round buds, compared to this small spiked bud. So you can see right now that these buds look a lot different. If you've ever seen a pawpaw, this bud is just like a feather. You can bend it and twist it, but it bends just like a feather. And there's one more picture of a collage here, and that is, here's another set of buds. Notice this great big long bud here. I've seen this one up to 2 inches in length grow a beech tree. Then over here we have this spiked bud coming out here. This is one of our buckeyes. And this is our state tree right here. And our state tree is the yellow poplar, and we call this a duck-billed bud. But again, this collage of buds is simply to show you the difference between all of the buds on all these different trees. Again, knowing and being able to recognize these buds helps tremendously in the identification of a tree. And again, I have a way for you to do this automatically. So these broadleaf trees, talking about the arrangement of the leaves and buds, this is what we call alternating branching. And that is when you have a bud, this is a bud on a beech tree, you see that it goes out here to the left-hand side. Well, to get to the next bud, you have to go up and off to the opposite side to find another bud. Again, this is referred to as alternating branching. I'll just tell you this secret right now. In forestry, we do not use a lot of highfalutin terms. This is alternating. Wait till you see the next one. Opposite, okay? Opposite. So branching, you can see a bud here, a bud here. There's a bud, there's a bud, here's a bud, and there's a bud there. So you can see that we have either opposite or alternating branching. These buds, remember, will turn into limbs eventually. So you just need to be able to look at a tree and say, okay, is it alternating or is it opposite? And when you do that, then what happens is you eliminate a lot of trees that could possibly be what you're looking at. Okay, we're going to move from arrangement of leaves and buds, and we're going to move on to the form of a leaf. And the first one we're going to talk about is simple. Simple, again. Remember the secret that I told you a moment ago. We do not use highfalutin terms. Now, let me get my cursor. I think I have this circled here in a second, but there's a bud, and there's a bud. There's a bud. Yeah, you can see all three buds lined up right there. What we want to do is you want to find that bud. Remember, here's the stem, there's the bud. So this is the petiole on the leaf. Now, the simple leaf is this right here. I know it's moth-eaten right here, but excuse me. This is a simple leaf in that you come off of the bud, you have a petiole, and there's one blade. If you simply hold your hand flat in front of you, your forearm would be the petiole, your hand would, with your fingers together, that would be the simple leaf. Now what we're going to do is go to the other form, and that is compound. Now, where the red circles are where the buds are. So what I did is I went and found that bud, and here's this long, what we call the rachis. And on this rachis, we have multiple little leaves, all right? This is a compound leaf because we identified, because there's the bud, there's the rachis, but we have all these multiple leaves, and they are called leaflets, all right? I'm not sure if that showed up or not, but that arrow going down there are pointing to all the leaflets. So it takes all of these leaves to make up this leaf, all right? Again, the bud is down here. This is the rachis, and we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 leaflets. Again, you can start to see with compound and simple, you can now get a lot of different assortments. Again, you don't have to remember these concepts, or you remember the concepts, but don't remember the specifics, because there's going to be a roadmap for you here shortly. Okay, the next one is going to be the leaves margins. All right, and the leaf margin, this is what we refer to as entire or unlobed. Entire simply means you can go all the way around this without running into any indentations. Again, on this leaf, you can go all the way around, no indentation. All the way around, no indentation. So that's entire or unlobed. The next one is called serrated. And serrated to me is a word that I use when I talk about a saw. And you can see that on the margin of this one, we have little saw teeth. Now, when we start identifying trees, you'll find out that serration can come very fine serration or very coarse serration. Many little doodads going along the leaf here. That's fine serration. If it's coarse serration, there won't be as many of these serrations on it itself. And the other thing when we're talking about the margin, and that is lobes. Do leaves have lobes? Well, this is the lobe right here, and the indent, well, the whole thing is the lobe. And here's the indentation in here. Now, this is one of the oaks, and this is a yellow poplar. This is the indentation right here, and this is the lobe part of it, all right? So we now have an entire, serrated, and lobed trees. Again, hopefully, at the end of this, the roadmap that you're going to see will eliminate all this confusion of trying to remember all this. You don't have to remember anything. I did change one picture up here in the top right-hand corner. This is another oak leaf right here. This is white oak down here at the bottom. This is one of our red oaks. Notice that it has a sinus right here, not quite as deep as the sinus on this white oak. And also it has points on the end of it where this white oak does not have points. So just a few different looks of trees. Okay, well, guess what? It's test time. You've learned everything there is to know about tree identification. And if we look at our watches, we'll find out that that only took 25 minutes. And now it's a test time. Test number 1, conifer or broadleaf? I can't see if you're typing anything here and there or not. I'm just going to give you a moment to look at this, but it is a conifer because it has these needles on it. And again, you'll notice that this is a fascicle of 5. There's 5 needles on this particular conifer. And just to let you know, it is a white pine, but this is a conifer. All right. Test number 2, opposite or alternate. Remember, look for the bud first. Here's a bud, here's a bud. So this tree is opposite. Here's a bud, there's a bud. So this is a leaf going up here. This is a leaf petiole going up here. All right. So it is opposite. Simple or compound. That's the leaf itself. Here's the bud down here, which means this is the rachis going up through here, the petiole. And you'll find out that we're jumping. Here's 2 leaflets. Here's 2 leaflets, and here's the 5th one. So this is a compound leaf. Here's the bud, and to see the whole leaf, you have to find 5 leaflets. Alternate or opposite? Remember, look for the buds. Here's a bud, there's a bud, here's a bud, there's a bud, everywhere a bud. Okay? So if you go down through here, you'll notice that they are not opposite, but they alternate from side to side. This is an alternate tree. Margins, is it serrated or lobed? Remember, serrated is like a saw, lobed is indentations. This to me looks like a saw. So this particular tree has serrated leaves. Opposite or alternate? Again, look for the bud. Here's a bud, there's a bud. So that makes this the petiole on the leaf, So this is an opposite arranged tree. Okay, on every good university test, there should be a true and false question. Now, the question is this leaf lobed, serrated, and compound? Lobed, serrated, and compound. So what you do is you, first of all, the first thing you do in any question dealing with trees is find the bud. And there is the bud right there. Here's the petiole going right up here. And what do we have? It looks like it's one leaflet. So that means it is not compound, it is simple. Notice the edges are as smooth as can be. So it's not serrated, and lobed, it does not have any indentations. So this statement is truly false. Is it entire or serrated? Remember, we're talking about the margins. Is it entire or serrated? Remember, and going around here, I do not see any saw marks. So this is an entire leaf. The leaf margin is entire. Now, which one doesn't fit into the sequence? You've got 4 leaves. What you're looking for is a sequence, and I will give you a clue. Look at the margins. Here's the margin on this tree. Here's a margin. Here's a margin, and there's a margin. So what we're seeing here is there are 3 trees that have a serrated margin, and the 4th tree, number C, is entire. It is smooth as can be. So letter C is not fitting the sequence. Leaves, are they simple or compound? Well, let's look for the bud. Here's a bud, there's 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 a bud. Are they simple or compound? And I'm seeing there's something above there, and I can't remember what it is. The things on the top there are getting in my way. But this is a simple, or they simple or compound. It's take right here from what you, I know what you can see. Right here is what you can see. This is a simple leaf. All right, simple. Test number 10. Boy, that's pretty good. Okay, opposite, or are they alternate? Well, if you go down here, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. You have to go back and forth. So that means that they are alternating all the way up through here, alternating. And are they entire or serrated? And you can see right here that they are as smooth as can be. So that means it's entire and not serrated. Serrated means it has teeth. That's question 10A. Oh, extra credit. Okay, the form on this thing. Let's take a look and see what we have here. And that is, let's look for the buds. Here's a bud, there's a bud, here's a bud, there's 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 a bud. The arrangement on this thing is alternating, and the margins are serrated. And what is the leaf form? One leaf, so it is simple. It is not compound, it is simple. So, in the process of identifying trees, there's a logical sequence to identify the correct tree. And that's what we're going to go over right now, is what is this logical sequence of identifying a tree? Well, it's an instrument that we use called a dichotomous key. Now, here comes your first Greek word of the day. Dichotoma, and that means divided, and ditch means in two. So what we're doing is we are going to be asking you questions. I'm going to be asking you questions. There's 2 statements, and you pick the one true statement out of the 2 that are being delivered to you. So it is the dichotomous key. 2 questions, 1 answer. It's a process in which to identify an organism based upon choices. And there's going to be 2 choices each go round. And this is the book that I'm going to be showing you here momentarily. You can buy this book online. It's called Tree Finder. It's relatively inexpensive. And if you have classrooms that you want to deal with, you can certainly buy these in multiple numbers, and it's not expensive. I think they're maybe $5. I think at most state parks you can find these things. They're a few dollars more than that, but you can probably pick them up on one of the links out there on the web for about $5 a piece. But it's called Tree Finder, and it's in your resources that'll be sent to you at the end of the day. Now, a speaker should never, never say, I know you can't see this, but. Well, I know you can't see this, but. First of all, you can see this. It says start here, and we're on page 5. And the things that I have circled there in that pinkish color, it's simply that this particular book is so good because it does not use scientific terms. It does use the word bundles. It doesn't use that scientific name that I talked to you a little bit earlier. And it talks about leaves and needles, okay? That scientific name for bundles was fascicle, remember that? So this is what the book looks like inside. Here is a very quick abbreviated example of how to identify this leaf right here. Well, we'll see what the first one is. It says, first of all, does it have needles or leaves? Here's the 2 questions. Remember, it's a dichotomous key, two questions at one time, or 2 statements at one time, and you pick the best and move forward. Does it have needles or leaves? Well, it looks to me like it has leaves. If it had needles, most likely it would be a conifer, but it says it's B, it has leaves. Let's go down to B. B says, are they simple or compound? And I have made a circle around, here's a bud, there's a bud, there's a bud. So, and then here's the blade. I think the next, yeah, there's the blade right there. So this is a simple leaf. It says go to C. In fact, it says go to C for both of them. Now it says opposite or alternate. Going back through here, you can see that we are alternating as we go up the stem. If it was opposite, we would go to E, which is probably a maple or an ash, but it tells us to go to F. Go to F, and it says that this tree that we're looking at is a serviceberry. Here comes your first Latin name for the day, and that's Amelanchier canadensis. That is the serviceberry. And this was a very simple tree key going through here, identifying this. Now we'll get a little more complicated. Here's the Tree Finder book that we're going to be using. I'm going to be turning the pages for you here momentarily. And this is the leaf that we're going to be looking at. Now, I know what everybody's going to say, and they're going to sit back and take it easy. At least they think they are in the next few minutes. This is a redbud. It's very obvious. It's what everybody has in their front yard as a landscape tree. Most everybody does. But the thing is I'm going to explain to you how you identify it as being a redbud using a dichotomous key. And the dichotomous key that I'm using is the Tree Finder, which you see right here. I'm going to move this picture over a little. We're going to always keep the picture in front of us on every page of the book that I turn to. And we are going to go through here and identify using the key, the dichotomous key. So I just want to mention to you, this is the branch. Here's a bud, a bud, a bud, and there's a bud right there. So you can see that, well, we'll find out what you need to see on that picture. We're going to have it stay with us. I love this on page 5. I love it where it says start here. Okay. The 2 important words, does it have needles or leaves? Well, that looks like a leaf to me. So we're going to go on to page 14. We're on page 5. You may not be able to see it up there, but there's a 5 right there in that circle. So between page 5 and page 14, we've just jumped over all that. Well, since it says needles, all of the needle trees are on pages 5 to 14. We go to page 14 and start with leaves. Take this icon with you also, folks. Trust me, take the icon with you because we're going to need it on page 14. Okay, here's page 14. Here's the icon. The 2 words that you need to find here are opposite, alternate, opposite, alternate. Okay, doot, 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 doot. And you should be saying to yourself, That looks like an alternate going tree for me. Correct. And it's going to tell you to go to page 21. Well, we're on page 14. So between pages 14 and 21 are all the alternate trees. No, I'm sorry, all the opposite trees are on pages 14 to 21. So we're going to eliminate, we can just rip those pages out if we want to, and we're going to jump square ahead to page 21 to start picking up on alternate ones. So let's turn to page 21. Don't forget to take the icon. And here's the icon. And the two important words here, is it compound or is it a simple? Okay, let's pick a leaf. Here's the bud. Here's the rachis. Here's the leaf. It's one simple blade. So it is simple. We're going to jump to page 28. We're on page 21. That means all of the compound leaves are between pages 21 and 28. We're going to jump to page 28. Don't forget the icon. And on page 28, here's the icon. This is probably the most confusing part of this entire book, and that is the first statement that they make there. If the leaf has neither teeth nor lobes, it's always confused me. That means there's no teeth, no lobes. I know what it means. It's just every time I read it, I have to look at it. And then this one says it has teeth. Well, if you go around there, that is what I refer to as an entire leaf. So it's going to be next page, and we're going to look for this icon right here, next page. And that's page 29. Here's the icon. And now the two words that we want to look for here is a single bristle or no bristle. Folks, this is a single bristle. We are talking about a hair or a thorn on the end of the needle, like a holly. I think most of you probably know what a holly is. That is what we mean by a single bristle. This tree does not have a bristle. So no bristle, next page, that icon right there. There's the icon. Now the two words are heart-shaped, not heart-shaped. Well, if you look at that, that is characteristic heart-shaped if I've ever seen one. It means we have now found it. It is the red bud, and it's called, for our Latin friends out there, Cercis canadensis. All right. Again, here's our tree finder. This is the book that we just used. I will give you the information about it on your sheet that's being sent to you right after this class is over. And this is a generic sheet of paper that describes the entire book. I think the book is like 60 pages long, but this generic piece of paper right here tells you everything about that book. It tells you about the dichotomous key in that we start with a simple tree. Do we go conifer? Do we go broadleaf? If it's conifer, we have to look for fascicles, either flat or needle, one needle, or a fascicle of needles. So I've written the word fascicle in here. And then if we were looking at a broadleaf, a deciduous tree, it's either alternate branching or opposite branching. And then it becomes, is it simple or compound? Again, it's just a progression of getting you closer and closer. And the other word that I wanted to leave you with, and that, I want to go back here, I think right here, 3 new words for the day. And I'll circle them, fascicle, dichotomous key, and leaflet. Now, your assignment between now and when you go to bed tonight, whoever is at the meal table with you this evening, I want you, this is your assignment, I want you to work these 3 words into the conversation. And that is dichotomous key, fascicle, and leaflet. And they will know that you are really smart when you are able to take all of these words and incorporate them. It doesn't have to be one sentence, just in the conversation as the evening goes on or the day goes on. You can, if you're at work, work with your workmates there and spring this on them. But these are the 3 words that I want to leave you with. Dichotomous key is simply a key of progression, getting you closer to where you need to be. Fascicle is simply a bundle of needles. And leaflet is that a leaf can be simple, just one blade, or it can be made up of a compound of blades. Let me give you a real quick situation that happens to us all the time. We'll be sent in a package, we will be sent these leaves. And what they have done is really done a fine job. They've taken the leaves off of the tree, they put them into a plastic bag to make sure they don't dry out, and they finally get to us and we open them up. And what happens is a lot of times is they will take a compound leaf and take the leaflets apart. So here we are with a handful of leaflets trying to figure out what this tree is. So recognize the fact that if you have a compound, well, doesn't matter what kind of leaf you have, start at the bud, pull it off at the bud. Don't pull all the leaflets off of the rachis, okay? That's your assignment. 3 words in the conversation the rest of the day. Okay, I'm leaving you with this picture. Here's a picture right here. And that is a picture of a forest. In fact, this was actually taken at Robinson Forest. And notice that all these trees are standing upright, exactly the same as this picture right here. All of these people standing shoulder to shoulder, standing upright. And again, remember, we use characteristics to identify them. Their height, their weight, their gender, their skin tone, all of these different characteristics we use to identify these people. What it is, there's just simply another set of characteristics that we use to identify trees. And all we need to do is find the right book, which is called a dichotomous key, which will process you down through identifying trees. This particular page right here will be coming to you after this class is you, and it is simply the a listing of places that you can either go on web, or these first 2 are actually books that you can purchase. The Tree Finder is the one that I use to identify these leaves. It is a tremendously good book for $5. Also state parks sell them. In that it takes care of all of the trees east of the Mississippi. It is a tremendously valuable book, small and straightforward. Peterson Field Guide is much more extensive, but it gives you the same answers. And then these are different websites that you may want to take a look at. I will mention to you right here, the very bottom one, the bottom 2, the University of Kentucky and the Forestry Department, they are actually doing videos of common trees of Kentucky. And they have, I think, 50 trees right now that you can go in and spend 5 minutes discussing each one of the trees. And so that brings me to the end of my portion of it. The thing is, and I'll close this out in a second, the thing is, you should be able to go out now with your 2 books. If you have the winter one, you should be able to go out and identify just about any tree that there is out there. So what I'll do is I will jump off of this sharing. And if there's any questions out there, let's see. Whoa, I want to stop sharing. Okay, it looks like I'm back. And let's see. No questions.
Oh, no questions in the chat so far.
All right.
So thank you so much, Doug, again, for presenting this for us. Always so informative and helpful in identifying trees. I just love the way you do this presentation and walk us through it. And I will be teaching those terms to my 3- and 5-year-old tonight at the dinner table. I'll really impress their teachers.
What is so difficult about that assignment is trying to find a way in which to incorporate them into your conversation, especially at a dinner table. It right. becomes difficult, but please do it.
So if anyone has questions, feel free to chat, type them in the chat, or just unmute yourself, and you'd be happy to, Doug will be happy to answer those.
I will mention while we're waiting, in case anybody has any questions, and that is, I warned you during Winter ID, take someone with you to go out and look at these trees. I would suggest strongly, don't go into the front yard of people's yards, homes, because most of those are introduced trees that are not in these books. These are forest-related trees that we've been talking about all morning. But what you want to do is take somebody with you that is well-versed and can identify these trees. They are only there for one purpose, and tell them this on the front end. They're only there for one purpose, and that is to confirm or deny that you have found the right answer. Do not let them have the chance to take over, because we as professionals feel obliged to tell you everything, but you're there to learn. So you want to take that book and go page by page using that dichotomous key and coming up with an answer. Now, that individual can tell you if you're going wrong or in the wrong direction, but don't let them take over and say, well, let me tell you, let me show you, or let me just simply tell you what the name of this is. It's much better for you to make mistakes. In fact, I heard that on a radio show when I was coming in here this morning, to make mistakes where you find out where your paths go wrong. So take somebody with you, but they are only there to confirm or deny what you are trying to find out. So take it slow and easy, and it's a much easier way to do things. Faye, if you want to, we can next October, December, we can do this all over again, do winter ID.
All right. Always love to have you back. That would be excellent. For sure. And I think these Zoom presentations will continue. Maybe we'll have an in-person at some point. It'd be great to go out in the field and do this as well. So thank you all so much for joining. And Jessica Sayer will be sending you those handouts by email soon. And I hope you'll join us for our next session.
And don't forget what your assignment is at the dinner table tonight.
Yes.
Dichotomous key, fascicle, and leaflet. And please send me an email as to how you did that. Thank you, everybody. It was enjoyable having you with us.